Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the HamRadioConcepts podcast, episode 13. I didn't know I would get to 13 this quick or with this much following, but this is KJ4YZI Eric, and I started on YouTube with HamRadioConcepts, and this is a new one here. If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see a video of this podcast, and this was suggested by one of the guests that are on the video today or on the podcast today. We have a couple special guests here, and this is going to be a very high energy, a very informative podcast, and I hope that you love it as much as I do because I really want to learn. So I am Eric, KJ4YZI. If you're new to this podcast, you can go to youtube.com and just type in Ham Radio Concepts, and you'll see a plethora of videos of what I've done. I am fascinated by this hobby. And over the years, things have to come up new and change. And people said, why are you doing the podcast? Because I get to connect with people and do things on podcasts and learn. It's not for me, it's for us. If you have an idea or a notion for this podcast, email me at hamradioconcepts@gmail.com and let me know, and we could talk about it. And that's where this podcast episode came from, because I have two guests on here, and this podcast goes wherever it wants. So there's no scripting. We haven't talked about anything before the podcast. If you want to listen to this, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Podchaser, Deezer, Google Podcasts, Audible, so many, wherever you get your podcast, type in Ham Radio Concepts, all one word, and you'll get that podcast. And also, if you want that AM Shortwave radio feeling from traditional shortwave, you can listen on WRMI, Okeechobee, Florida, from 9.395 megahertz facing North America on their 100,000 watt rhombic, or 5.950 megahertz facing Europe and North Africa, and some people in North America can hear it as well. So I'm going to introduce two guests here, and you may have heard about these products before, and you got to excuse me again doing this in front of a camera. I'm wondering, should I watch my computer and the microphone? But I forget people are watching on this camera when you see this on YouTube. So no problem. We're going to do it just the way I do it. And however it goes, it goes. So we have two guests here. I'm going to first introduce the very high energy, smartest person I've ever heard talk about antenna theory with a creation that he's made that you've seen before on a video, the COMPACtenna. This is Dr. Jack. Dr. Jack, please introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's a real pleasure to be here today with you. You are quite renowned and gifted at what you do. And Jeff the Ham Bandit. I am Jack Nilsson, Dr. Jack Nilsson, N8NDL, November 8, November Delta Lima. I am an inventor of antennas, electromagnetism, and energy. Again, a pleasure to be with you.
Very good. I can't wait. I'm smiling ear to ear. People can see it now, Jack, because they're on video and they can see this. I'm so excited. Jeff, I want to introduce yourself, Jeff. Jeff KD9TOE. Introduce yourself, my friend.
Hello, Eric. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Dr. Jack, it's a pleasure being on with you. We always have fun talking. Eric, it's been great so far to be a part of your subscribers, and I'm just a small channel so far, but still working on it. But it's a pleasure being here. I appreciate it.
Ham Bandit, is that the name of your channel, Jeff?
Yeah, it's called Ham Bandit. It's started it with me. I wasn't a ham. I wanted to kind of document the whole getting the license, building your antenna, getting the radio, and Bandit is my dog.
Very good.
The ham, he's the bandit. So
all right, Ham Bandit. So if you could check out the links, if I could put them in the description, the Ham Bandit on YouTube. I've always encouraged everybody to make their own YouTube channel. It's not just me. It's not just the mainstream that you watch. I hope everybody gets the courage and the want to do this, because it is very tedious and it is a full-time job to do this. So I Ham Bandit. We're going to talk with Jeff here. Jeff, and the reason I have them both on, why do I have them both on? Because Dr. Jack, and if you're watching on the video here, the COMPACtenna, You've seen the COMPACtenna in my videos, right? It is right here. The COMPACtenna. I think this antenna is just amazing, and I've used it for a while. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk to Dr. Jack, the creator. If I can move this over here, because again, I'm doing this on video, and I didn't, this is the first time. So Dr. Jack is the creator of this COMPACtenna, and Jeff is actually, me and Jeff are actually users of this. And I want to do more than just talk about an antenna, man. We're going to go into theory and all kinds of stuff, whatever we could do. The bottom line is the shortwave, if you're listening on shortwave, is an hour long. But the podcast can be whatever it wants. If we run 10 minutes over, I'll try to cut it right before 1 minute, and you can continue on listening to Dr. Jack and hear all his stories and everything on the podcast or on YouTube. That's where it's at. So let's start with Dr. Jack first. And I'm going to preface it with this. He is very high energy. This man is smarter than I'll ever be. I want to hear his story on how he got started with this, because Dr. Jack invented this. He had a notion. He had a theory. He has mucho education on how this works. And I want to hear from Dr. Jack. Go ahead, Mr. Dr. Jack. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I've had a very interesting life, but to summarize it, what it boils down to is that my education is dual-fold, Eric. It's in mathematics and physics, and also in medicine. And as I continued my investigation of electromagnetic wave propagation, some years back I decided that the pure focus on gain was really not the only way to go. That we communicate in an obstructed environment with a multipath. And sometimes gain would help you a little bit, longer antenna, these types of things, collinear, whatnot, but not as much as we would have desired. So, fortunately, I'm fairly fortunate to be able to think deeply, and I decided to really meditate on the idea and put everything aside and resonate, as it were, with good energy to come up with a different way of looking at things. Now, this was about 20 years ago, and at that time, it turns out cell phone companies, for example, and Wi-Fi companies were doing their thing, which I was not aware of, but they were using electronics, realizing that in the obstructed environment, with the multipath, that diversity was important. And that's why you started seeing Wi-Fi equipment with multiple little antennas and claiming greater range, right? With no increase in the gain of the antennas themselves. So they were using multiple antennas, and they went from receive diversity to switching, or full diversity to BMO, multiple in, multiple out kind of configurations. What I was doing was creating diversity within a single feed antenna. And that worked very well. Spatial and polarization diversity. Flip-flops of the polarization as it refracts, and all of that kind of thing. More recently, and I'm trying to summarize here and turn it right back to you, and thank you so much for orchestrating this, a new need was there. And it was both with the mobile environment as well as the home environment. The need to have small yet powerful, and it's a virtual oxymoron, because with standard technology, the smaller you make the antenna, you dramatically reduce the performance, the gain, the performance gain. Those are two different things, actually. There's some overlap, but they're two different things. And also you narrow the bandwidth, you decrease efficiency, all of these kind of things. So the vision came to me in a virtual nanosecond one morning as awakening some years ago that we needed to do something entirely different. And the way to do that, I'll just state this and then turn it back to you so you can ask me further, was to build the antenna entirely different with a different scientific concept. Understanding the near field. And there's a lot of Einstein, there's Tesla, there's Niels Bohr there's all of these things, but to do three things, okay? Number one, I needed to reduce the matching losses. All right. And to do that, I needed to incorporate the matching, which I call the magnetic field resonator, into the construct of the antenna itself. And then that resonator needed to also be, this is number 2, efficient in the signal production. All right. And then lastly, designed in such a way that it would increase the bandwidth that you would expect from a short antenna. And then lastly, this is in summary, to take that signal with polarization diversity, essentially an elliptical polarization, a diverse electromagnetic field in the near field that then translates to the far field, and in that way reducing flutter. That was the concept, and then rigorously building it in various configurations to optimize it for various applications. One for the mobile, 7.5-inch antenna, 2 meter 440, 220 included on one of the models, giving you much better performance on your vehicle than you would thought, to be able to go in and out of parking garages, in and out of your own garage, these kind of things. And then there's the home. So many of us in housing associations where we would like to have reasonable performance out of a small antenna from a base station antenna. So in the long run, and then I will absolutely turn it right back to you. Sorry about that. It's a little difficult to summarize. Perfect and optimize the various monofiller Tesla-like coils within the antenna, plus additional geometric structures to apply to ham radio, CB, scanner radios, land mobile radio, GMRS, and shortwave. Thank you for that introduction. I hope it wasn't too long for you, Eric.
No, you know, and this is kind of very exciting to be smiling this much on camera. So let me sum it up to you, because, and again, the reason we're gonna have Jeff on here is because, you know, Dr. Jack had sent me these antennas a long time ago, well, last year or whatever, and you know, I don't do videos like, hey, say this. No. He said, I want your honest opinion. And that was the thing, because I had never thought about an antenna like this. So let me show you for the people that are watching, because now this is interesting. This may be every podcast ever in the future with a video. I want you to look at this for the people that are watching. This is a COMPACtenna. This is actually, I think, let me ask you, Jack, do you put Scan 3 on the Scan 3s?
I do now. The new labels are actually a little larger, so it makes it very clear what model it is.
Okay, so my mediocre planning, I can't. The Scan 3 must be in my car. This is the COMPACtenna, okay? And I want you to look at this for a second, for those who are watching, or if I'll describe it in a very radio form. When I shop for antennas, the first thing I do is I want the longest antenna, because the longest antenna has the best performance. Height is might. The more metal in the air, the more gain you get. But I was blown away when he sent me this, because I was like, wow, I don't understand it. This thing is 7.5 inches, or the Scan 3 is 9 inches. And I thought, I really got to find out. But in that video of my very, you know, non-technical kind of testing, I talked to Jim, W2JKD, on Simplex, and I talked to a couple other people. I actually turned my radio down to 0 watts, just the driver, and was full scale, full quieting into a repeater locally with an antenna like this. That was kind of my, testing. But for 14 miles to talk to a guy on Simplex, a friend of mine, with an antenna this size, okay, 7.5 inches, you'd think, no way, man, I want the long one. But then I realized when I started researching and talking to Dr. Jack that this is not just, hey, we're going to make an antenna shorter, because there's instructions with this that tell you how to strategically place this on your vehicle. You know, and I didn't understand that. I'm going to let Dr. Jack explain that, and we're going to turn it to Jeff here, because Jeff hasn't said nothing on this podcast yet. But you can see this right here. You may think this antenna is only less than 9 inches long. How could I really make a contact far? And Dr. Jack had said it, with fluttering and buildings around and stuff. He went beyond trying to come up with an antenna that was just short. It was short and effective. And I could tell you right now, it is, because I use this. And now I'm going to turn it to Jeff here because Jeff uses it. Jeff purchased this probably because he found my video on YouTube. Jeff, go ahead. Tell me what you think. Tell everybody what you think about the COMPACtenna, and talking with Jack here, the owner.
Well, I purchased my first one and my second one. The first one I did a lot of research because I learned my lesson from CB 11 meter. That's what I started on, and for years. And I wasted a lot of money on antennas and different types of stuff, and before you really learn. And the one thing I noticed about the COMPACtenna, and one of the big sellers for it was, for me, was because I live in an apartment, for one, and I needed a small antenna. I had permission to put it outside, so I needed something small. That was the requirement. And the other requirement was I wanted something that could receive wide band, pretty much, a wide swath of the band. And his antenna provided that. No other antenna does that in that size. So he definitely has a niche there, because I went ahead and purchased the base kit for it and put it on a pole up on the roof, and was astounded by the how far I was getting into repeaters just with the tri-band on a base mount. I was getting a little over 45 miles away, and towards the other direction, I could talk about the one I measured through Google was 54 miles. And the other fact was I didn't have to tune it. Literally, there's no screws on that antenna. There's no cutting of wires. There's no shortening of this, shortening of that. You just put it on some metal, and if you don't like it there, you just kind of wiggle it around over there to the other side there, and it works. And I found a nice spot on my car, but to be honest, the roof mount, I did nothing to put it. I put it up and was talking 70 centimeters, basically what that antenna advertised I was talking, and at a really low SWR. I had the highest I had on 2 meter was 1.7, and on the other scale of the 70 centimeters, I wasn't even 1.1 on with that antenna. So that's the reason why I went with the COMPACtennas. And after using it, I just that's all I buy now. So if I don't make it, I buy Dr. Jack's COMPACtennas. So let me turn it back to you guys there, and Eric, and let you comment there.
Well, that is exactly, Jeff. You hit a couple things that I haven't said. There is no tuning of this antenna. The big thing in ham radio is, oh my gosh, I gotta have a low SWR. Oh my gosh, I gotta tune this thing. How do I tune it? Do I need an analyzer? Look at it. Look at it. There's no tuning in this thing. It just worked. And it took me a minute to figure out that when you put it in different places on your vehicle, that it would give you a lower SWR. And I'm going to ask Dr. Jack about this in a second, because his instructions were specifically corner mounted, like the corner of the roof or the corner of the hood. And of course, I was like, nah, I'm going to do it my way. And I put it in the middle, and it had a totally different reaction than it did on the corner. But as you said, wide banded, Jeff. The Scan 3, when I had requested a Scan 3, I said, hey, I checked this out. You sent me this. I want to try this. GMRS, ham band on 144 megahertz, ham band on 70 centimeters, all the way up to 800, 900. And I tried with a cheap analyzer to show, for some reason, this antenna is resonant on all these different bands without doing anything. And that is amazing, because I like resonant antennas. So I'll turn it to Dr. Jack here, because I know he's chomping to talk about this. Before I do that, Dr. Jack, let me tell you, if anybody's listening on shortwave, you might be finding this on 9.395 megahertz or 5.950 megahertz. If you want to hear this and see the video, youtube.com Look up Ham Radio Concepts. You'll see this. Go to Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google, Audible, Google Podcasts, Podchaser, and so many more. This podcast is everywhere. So I hope you get to subscribe, download it, listen to it on the way to work. Go ahead, Dr. Jack.
Well, Eric,
I know that was a lot of me talking. I'm trying to be the radio guy. I am not, but go ahead.
Oh, you are. You're excellent. I'm smiling over here as well. Both you and Jeff are a pleasure to hear what you say in your content. Yeah, isn't it just wonderful how nature rewards you when you open up your mind. Things become so different because one thing we didn't even mention was that it also reduces noise, and that's important at the HF and shortwave listening frequencies with all the switching power supplies we have around, right? I mean, other than the magnetic field antenna, here's an alternative, and it's not expensive, even though it's all USA made. And on the vehicles, more and more electric vehicles, they have noise, and
I have to interrupt you. You just said that. Tell us again. I forgot to even mention that. USA made. Are you making this in USA and making sure all of these that are shipping are to your standard?
100%.
See everybody listening. You guys have pushed me how many times? I want American made. I want this. This is Dr. Jack's creation. This is American made, and he's putting his hands on all these to make sure that you're not buying some clone. It says COMPACTenna on it. It is American made. He has developed it, and he is checking it. I just had to throw that in there. Go ahead, Jack.
No, you're absolutely right. We have some wonderful tool and die shops, machine shops, fab shops in the United States, and a lot of them were developed in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Some are still around. Just fantastic. So I contract out to them in the United States, and particularly regionally around me here. So for example, it's a delight to have people report, and I put this on the website, COMPACTenna.com. That's like compact. ENNA.com, people with the Tesla vehicle. And even when the vehicle was turned off, they couldn't use the standard antenna, no matter how high or low gain it was, because they had so much noise. And yet they had no problem when they used the COMPACtenna. It's just so different, It's just a wonderful thing. I mean, we all know about capacitance and inductance and creating oscillation and resonance, but when you can take that and you can turn that into something that you can utilize, where you have the immediacy, the quantum entanglement in the near field, and you have a balance of the electric and the magnetic field, right? Large antennas, a balanced electromagnetic field, but they're very large, and then they summate, as it were, into the far field, past 2D squared over the wavelength. So, then when you take a magnetic loop antenna, we have almost no electric field in the near field, right? So it's actually very inefficient. Of course, some good preamps can help. But then you have, the very shortened monopole, and that's just, it's okay, but you've really got a reduced electric and reduced magnetic field. Here you have a greater than expected magnetic and electric field in the near field. So what does this all mean? What it means is that if you take one of my 7.5-inch or 9-inch antennas, whether it's the 2-meter 440, 2-meter 220 440, Scan 3 for scanner, LMR1, you put it on my optimized compact counterpoise, which is ground plane adapter kit, and people they report to me they have it indoors, and they're hearing things they could not hear before. That all has to do with the power in the diversity. And then if you put it on a pole, simply on your chimney or whatnot, very non-visible, guarantee you will be surprised, even amazed at the performance that you will get from such a small antenna. On the vehicle, okay, it's different. Typically standard antennas, they emphasize optimization at the center of the vehicle. which actually often doesn't work real well either, as we all know, both in the CB and the ham world, because when you have moonroofs and sunroofs and on the electric vehicles, sometimes you have nothing, but, whatever. It still doesn't tune up as well as you would want, although it's okay. But when you put them to the corners, some of them work, some of them don't. But there are 4 corners of the vehicle. A lot of people don't want to put it in the center of the vehicle. They want to use a magnet mount, or they want to use an L bracket or an adjustable. These are designed for the corner. Could you take this technology? Could you do it and adapt the design in order that it would match up in the center of the vehicle at VHF? You could, but then you would deter the performance. Okay, there's a great balance here between the counterpoise and the antenna itself. And when you simply get it at the corner, where it utilizes the downward metal of the vehicle as well, it's just awesome. And on the compact counterpoise that I perfected, it's not brilliant, but it's clever. The counterpoises that are out there, when you look at SWR, when you look at performance, when you look at elevation coordinate pattern, and you look at VHF and UHF and the various frequency bands there, they're good here on SWR, not so good on performance there, vice versa. I needed to design one that was well all around. So that's the VHF, UHF. I want to say one more thing, but let me ask if you want to interject, because I want to make another comment about placement on the other antennas, the short HF antennas. Do you want to interject, Eric, or should I continue?
Well, you can continue. Let me just throw this in there. So I want you to talk about, because from my history of ham radio, what I've known, that when you told me this and I saw it in the instructions, whatever, I was like, well, if I put it in the corner, my radiation pattern is going to do this. And that was my first idea, that in the center you'd have omnidirectional pattern, and if you put it in the right rear corner, that you would have a pattern on the over the metal of the vehicle, away from the antenna, which I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that this antenna defies those rules. And also, I told you this the other day in an email, because we haven't talked about this podcast and we haven't scripted anything. I did tell you that I've seen a lot of these antennas that I believe you make on RVs out there, and I'm pretty sure they look like that COMPACtenna top load. And I think that a lot of people are using those for either CB or whatever. But yeah, you can continue. And that's what I want to talk about, was the placement when you said in the corner. Yeah, my SWR went way down. How does that react to the radiation pattern? Does it defy those laws? Go ahead.
Oh, you're awesome, because you actually gave an introduction to what I was about to say, and that is in terms of pattern. And now we're not talking about elevation coordinate pattern, we're talking about azimuth coordinate pattern all the way around. Absolutely. If you have standard antenna technology in the HF world, in the CB world, and you mount it at the rear left corner of the vehicle, you are going to get some increased gain towards the front right of the vehicle. Think of it as the metal actually pulling the signal in that direction. However, let's start with VHF UHF. In VHF UHF, this is not nearly an issue at all, really. Listen, I have to summarize here. So that's a summary comment. There's actually a lot of science between the counterpoise. The counterpoise is half your antenna. It's very important. All right, and a lot of interesting things occur. But when you're in the VHF and especially the UHF arena, and you're on a vehicle, and your metal is substantially greater than a quarter wavelength in length. In fact, much more than that, right? At 2 meters, for example, 6 feet is a quarter wave, and then at UHF, or a quarter wave at 6 meters. 2 meters, 6 feet, 1 quarter, 1.5 feet. So you are much more than a quarter wave at VHF and of course at UHF. So you have actually multiple wavelengths that you're dealing with here. You're not dealing with approximately or a portion of a quarter wavelength as you are with HF and CB. So it's a much different situation. You're utilizing the downward counterpoise of the vehicle. All right. So sort of like a dipole type of a configuration as well. So it works out. Is it perfect? Nothing's perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, but it is substantially omnidirectional. Now, You may say, okay, well, wait a minute. Don't you also make HF and CB antennas? And aren't they only 20 inches tall? And aren't they actually talking around the world? Yeah, 20-inch antenna. Why? Why? Because counterpoise that I mentioned. I just mentioned that about the vehicle. Okay, yes, but in this case, the vehicle is also capacitively coupling to planet Earth, to the groundwater, etc. Okay, so what that means is this. All right, so you invented a 20-inch, 20-meter antenna. I mean, it's almost hilarious, right? When you first think about it. Well, there are videos of out there of people utilizing it and talking around the world. Well, it's very, very important. Again, remember Tesla in all of this. It's very important to incorporate planet Earth. Listen, you can have a short monopole, but if you're still required to have multiple, 36 long radial wires going out in different directions to create your counterpoise, well, that's pretty hard to do in an attic, and it's pretty hard to do in a lot of people's backyards as well. If you could do something different, a short antenna with short counterpoise, now how would you do that? You have to get away from the wires, people. Again, open your mind. You've got to go to capacitive coupling. You have to use sheeting of metal. All right. So if you take the 20-meter antenna, put it on a roughly 3 foot by 3 foot galvanized piece of metal, take some standard aluminum foil, even bury it under the mulch 8 foot long at the opposite end of that. That's all you need, because then you are and the formulas of capacitive coupling are on my website. You can, go in there and plug in the various 20-meter frequencies, and you will see that you do have substantial capacitive coupling to Earth. So now you have not only a small antenna, you also have a small counterpoise. It's really cool, don't you think?
Well, folks, if you're wanting to just grab onto this, listen, COMPACtenna, Jack, give them all the resources that they need to find this information. If this podcast is not enough, how can they look up this information with your products and stuff? Hello? I think you're muted, Jack.
Jack. I was respecting you, Eric. I'm sorry.
No.
Yep.
Before I go on a tangent, give them, because people are listening like, wow, this is intense. How can they find your products and all this information before we keep going? Give them all your links and every bit of way that they can find your stuff.
All right, I have summarized this as best I can on the website, the home page and the installs page. So simply go to COMPACtenna.com. That's COMPACtenna.com. And the specification sheets on the various models are on the home page. People's experiences are on there, a few of them. And then the installs page for those that really want to optimize their installation. And it'll explain these things that I just said in very straightforward terms with photos and diagrams. So it's very, very straightforward.
I like how I remember when I first met you, Dr. Jack, and you had testimonials from people that were true, authentic testimonials, because you told me, these people sent these, and you had some guy with a brand new Corvette that had to have this thing on there. Now, me in my head, I'm thinking, if I got a brand new Corvette like that, I'm not going to first put a ham radio, but this person did. Because who wants a brand new Corvette and have to drill in the roof? You don't do that. And they put this on there, and the testimonial they gave was fantastic. And about I'm going to turn it to Jeff here for a minute, because I know Jeff is kind of like, hey, when do I get to talk? But Jeff, you said HOA, I think. Do you live in an HOA?
Yeah, I live in an apartment.
So did you say that you had the HF version?
I do have the shortwave HF, and I just actually I was kind of testing it, and to be honest, I tested it against my mag loop. That's how good it was, noise-wise. Literally, it was only 5 dB above my mag loop, and it was actually lower on some frequencies.
But tell us with that though, with what Dr. Jack had just said, and you in an HOA, because I know a lot of people think, oh man, HOA, you got to put this antenna up and run these wires out. What was your minimal footprint in an HOA, and how did it work for you?
Okay, my footprint as far as a yard is 8 feet by 6 feet. That's my front yard. I have no backyard.
Wow.
My building is a shared building, so I have no attic access. Okay, so I have to be really creative if I want an antenna. Mag loop was my choice to start out with an SDR, and when I got my ham license, I decided to go with the COMPACtenna because of the size, of course, and uh, I was able to get it access to the roof, and I put it on right at the eave of the roof where the peaks meet, and I put it on a 3-foot pole and run my coax down, and so I can't talk HF here because any sideband will wipe out a lot of the building stuff. And I've also got a neighbor with life support machines right next door, and so my noise level is really high with any kind of vertical antenna at all. The COMPACtenna takes the noise completely out. There's a few frequencies that do come through, but of course you're always going to have that. But that is my situation, and that's kind of how I kind of got in with Dr. Jack and talking with him because I needed a solution for my problem, and I have a serious problem.
So with that being said, all these people that have hounded me, hey, Eric, you know what? You say this. No, I'm in an HOA. You can agree, Jeff, that there is an option for this. I mean, because I'm not in an HOA. I haven't played with Dr. Jack's designs for HOA or for any small footprint. I have a tower, and I've yet to put the thing up. If it was me, okay, honestly, I'm not going to use a COMPACtenna on top of my tower because I have the footprint. But there are people out there that have limited options, and I think you're one of them. And you would say in your limited option, because the first thing that I recommend is a mag loop from whatever manufacturer. But what you're telling me is that is the next best thing or better in your situation, correct?
Yeah, it's literally comparable to my mag loop. So I can run this inside, and I have when I first started and made contacts just sitting in my living room with my HT 5 watts transmitting on a tri-band antenna, the COMPACtenna tri-bander, making contacts to the repeater, and that's over 15 miles away was my closest one. So yeah, if you have a situation, an HOA situation, I can definitely testify to any of that because I live in a very small footprint. So his antennas provided a solution that no other antenna can do as far as transmit wise, frequency range and receive range. So that's pretty much why I went with it.
Yeah, you said it right, and then so like Dr. Jack had said. So this, for those who are watching on YouTube, again, let's unscrew this here real quick and look at this. This antenna, you would think that a quarter wave on 2 meters would be 19 inches, and what Dr. Jack is saying is this is not a sub 19-inch antenna. This has some gain to it and reduces flutter and some noise. And the way that this operates is you're not just, Dr. Jack didn't just take this and say, well, you know what, we'll make it less than 19 inches and you'll fit it on your car. No, because a 19-inch antenna would be roughly 19 inch would be quarter wave for 2 meters. And off the top of my head, I can't think of the 77 meter. This has ingenuity to it. That's the thing. And it's more than just putting something in a piece like this and expecting performance. This thing, again, I'm a testimonial too. This has some way better features. And I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Jack here now. And before I do, if you're listening on shortwave, you're missing out on the very first Ham Radio Concepts podcast on video, where I'm holding this up here, taking a drink, and doing whatever I do because I can't believe I'm doing this with a camera pointing at me. So you can watch this and just watch how I do it in this very mediocre office on youtube.com/HamRadioConcepts. And also, if you want to look on, listen to a podcast, you're driving to work, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, Google Podcasts, Audible, just type in Ham Radio Concepts podcast. Ham Radio Concepts is all one word, and you'll listen to this. You can download it to your phone, listen whenever you want, and on shortwave, WRMI in Okeechobee. Send a signal report to HamRadioConcepts@gmail.com. Tell me what you thought about this show, and send a signal report to WRMI and tell them, hey, this is pretty cool. I like this. 9.395 megahertz, 5.950 megahertz every Sunday, Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Listen on shortwave. Put away the Netflix and the Facebook. Listen to traditional AM and listen to what I'm doing right now with Dr. Jack and Jeff on shortwave. I think that's just a cool notion to do. Everybody's got a radio that can receive it, and you may have an antenna that does, and if you don't, build one. Get into receiving shortwave. Back to Dr. Jack here. So, Dr. Jack, tell us about all your. I gotta feed the audience here. All the different models that you make. You know, I know I have the dual band 144, 440 megahertz, and the Scan 3, which does GMRS and 800 and other ones. Tell us about all the models that you have for those who are interested.
Okay. Thank you very much, Eric. And you know, my appreciation to WRMI, how exciting to have this program on shortwave radio, and especially for those people that are listening to it with the COMPACtenna 20-inch shortwave antenna, just as I do in my attic, with that piece of metal and the aluminum foil, like I said.
You have sent me videos on email, and you said, hey, check it out. I'm listening to you on shortwave, and I could see, and you're telling me you were listening on your own design of antenna?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm in an HOA myself, so all my antennas are in the attic.
Yeah, and you had a good, strong signal report from WRMI on your own antennas listening to the podcast, and now you're going to be on there, Dr. Jack.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm very appreciative. Okay, we're going to talk about the models. To lead into that, you mentioned VHF, you mentioned HF. You mentioned you have a tower. Yeah, this would not be fun. Yes, let's get to the nitty gritty. I'll stay away from the physics and just get to the actual utilization. All right, I took a sip of coffee. Here we go. VHF and HF. All right, VHF. We have a 7.5-inch VHF UHF antenna on the car. Okay, listen. If you're at the top of a mountain and the repeater's at the top of a mountain, and you're essentially line of sight. Now, atmospheric does have issues. I said I wouldn't go into the physics. You're going to have a little better performance on the very long antenna on your vehicle. But the second you get off that hilltop, the second you get off that mountaintop, and you get into multipath, that's where you increase the reliable range with this technology. Now, leading into models, I did decide that I would construct a special antenna that's 9 inches long, roughly, and that's the 2 meter 440 plus. So it gives you an additional gain. So then, even when you are at long-range line-of-sight communications, you are losing virtually nothing from the very long antennas.
Okay, I have to pause there because I just might have realized that I said something that maybe was not what I should have said. Now, this is not just a space-restricted antenna. This is what I'm getting, guys. So that might have been I apologize if I said that. When I meant tower, it's in my theory in my head that a bigger antenna is better. But what you're telling me is, and I may consider this, that even if you have the space, this is not just a space-restricted antenna. It has additional features that I may have overlooked as far as performance versus a larger antenna, correct?
Well, your point was still well taken. You know, the bottom line, VHF or HF, if you have a tall tower where you've got that antenna that becomes more line of sight to the communication you're trying to get to, gets away from the obstructions more, gets away from all of the noise. Oh no, the more you become line of sight and away from the noise, you know, gain becomes everything. You know, if you have a 150-foot tower, you don't put a mag loop up there either, right? Because in certain circumstances, only the very strongest signals are above the noise floor. They're the only ones you're going to get, say, in poor propagation conditions. You need a big antenna, all right? Certainly I can develop those as well, but that wasn't what this was all about. This was all about when you don't have the very tall tower and you can put the very high-gain collinear VHF or the multi-element Yagi HF up there, okay? So, and as it turns out, the circumstance where you don't have that is getting more prevalent in the society, isn't it? You know, and we needed to have some reasonable and even unexpectedly good performance. So that's what that was about. So what about the models? Okay, well, there's ham radio, and again, ham radio, CB, scanner, land mobile radio. GMRS is actually with the land mobile radio now antenna, which is similar to the Scan 3, but the land mobile radio specifically quality tuned for transmit for the land mobile radio environment. It's very important. And then shortwave. So what are the models? For ham radio, we have the 7.5 inch, 2 meter, 220, 440 for vehicle, or to put on the compact counterpoise. There's 10 models essentially. The 2 meter 440, which is very reasonably priced for USA made. I have never increased prices. Everybody else has. It's only $89 for my respected resellers on the vehicle, 7.5 inch, or on the compact counterpoise I designed. The 2 meter 440 plus gives you a little additional gain, a little higher power handling capability. It's like $20 more roughly, and it's great. I use it. I really like it. Then there's the 2 meter microbeam, which Jeff has. He was virtually giggly. He's virtually giggly about it. He can tell you about that. No tuning there. And also any of the base station antennas, VHF, UHF on the compact, there's no tuning. Just put it up, okay? As long, you got to stay away from metal structures with any antenna, but that's kind of common sense for most of us. There's no tuning. It's all tuned up. Then we have the other 9-inch antennas. We have the Scan 3. Listen, you want a small scanner antenna for your mobile or on the compact counterpoise for base station? It's just really great. It's 9 inches. The land mobile radio.
SDR. Don't forget for the SDRs too.
Absolutely. Oh, and all of that physics I talked about, how it improves analog with flutter, picket fencing, and that kind of thing, the improvement gets even, the benefit is even higher with digital communication, right? Because you go from signal to noise ratio, to packet errors, to frame error rate, to decreased throughput, to lost connectivity. All of these things can be explained with a nice dry erase board or chalkboard on how this improves that. And then there's the compact counterpoise that I already mentioned. Then there's the CB antenna, 20 inches only. And it's like, really? 20 inches? Come on, Dr. Jack. Come on. We all know that a full quarter wave whip on a vehicle works well. 6-foot antennas work well. 5-foot works well. 4-foot well-designed works well. 3-foot, 36 inches, it's beginning to be a substantial compromise. 20 inches, no way. The 2-foot, fiberglass antennas, they're just total compromise. You're talking 1.5 miles, if that, with standard power. This is entirely different technology. Looks different.
I'm curious on my diesel where I have or even my work truck where I talk sideband on CB as a ham all over the country, all over the world. I'd be curious to show how this CB antenna. That'd be amazing because I'm sure a lot of people want to get in CB, and the first thing they think of is that you have to have this huge quarter wave antenna. And listening to you before about the CB antenna, man, I'm I put two 4.5 foot whips on my diesel with my unit in CB, and I've made quite a few contacts, long distance, even on AM. On my work truck, I'd be curious to see how that works, because I'm a big CB guy, and I've talked to Australia and the UK and Scotland and Barbados, Bermuda, all the Caribbean stateside. I've done it on CB for many years, even recently. I'd be curious about that, Jack.
AM radio, CB, AM on the CB, 38 lower side, absolutely.
Yeah, 38 lower side's where it's happening.
I was a very avid CB operator. I still have CB. CB, there's a lot of right about CB. When push comes to shove, if everything really went sour, even if for a matter of days, I mean, there's CB communication out there. I have it in my attic on that aluminum foil extension, like I mentioned, and also on the vehicle. Now, on the vehicle, it does say on the website that that of course it can be on the vehicle for like POTA operations, park on the air, campgrounds. You mentioned RVs, this kind of thing. What about traveling down the road? That all depends on the sturdiness and the rigidity of the mount that's used. So because I can't control that, I don't officially recommend it, but there are many increasing reports of people that are utilizing rugged mounts. They're increasing availability of very nice rugged mount manufacturers for the 3/8 24 mount, like the CB and the 20 meter, and people are coming back, and you do a search and you'll find reviews that say, yeah, I'm driving down the road, it's doing just fine. I wouldn't put it on just a 5-inch mag mount, no, but there are reports that people are doing very well with it. So just if you do it, make sure you use a sturdy mount and that. And then finally, there's the shortwave antenna, the shortwave radio receive antenna, and there are a lot of options out there. I think magnetic loops. I've designed magnetic loops for companies when I worked for them as a senior antenna design engineer, and I think it's great. I think it's great technology, and those that come out with it that are able to perfect the tuning of it, the dimensions of it, whatever preamplifier wideband that they will use on it is really quite brilliant, and it's awesome. But they're not cheap. They're not inexpensive. This is an alternative for you. Again, the resellers sell it for only $99, and it works. That summarizes it, Eric.
So I have a question about that, because I am only about 40 miles from the WRMI shortwave that this episode is being broadcast on. And Dr. Jack, I can't receive that. Now, there's other people in my area in Vero Beach that say they can hear it. It's not, but I think I know you and Jeff up there have heard this. I get reports all over the world that are 20 over, 40 over, plus 9. I wonder if that shortwave antenna, compared to me just putting a wire up, would actually let me listen to. Do you know I've never listened to my own shortwave broadcast at my house, because I think I'm on the too close to the ground wave. I wonder, if you ever had one to let me borrow for a few days on a Sunday, I wonder whether that wouldn't justify the performance of the antenna at all, because I may just be in a bad spot. But there's other people in Vero, but that would really change my life if that's the case, because I put up wires, I put up verticals, and I can't hear this shortwave broadcast. I have yet to listen to myself on shortwave at my house 40 feet or 40 miles away. What do you think about that?
It's certainly worth a try in terms of the technology, and it isn't a very expensive way to go. We'll talk about your no worries, Eric.
I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just saying you're making
no
me think, because Jeff uses that, and Jeff says it works well for him, and you're saying you listen to it.
Okay, well, yeah, let's see what Jeff has to say. But there are different types of propagation, right? So you have ground wave propagation. And when you're 40 miles away, you're either going to be benefiting from ground wave propagation or NVIS. Yeah. Near vertical incident signal. So either ground wave that's coming, across the ground to you, and that's more likely. Let me see. a probability. NVIS is going up to the ionosphere and virtually coming straight back or close to it. So NVIS is usually, upwards of 100, 200, maybe 400 miles, and then you have the standard ionosphere refracting propagation. And that can take you, thousands of miles. So in your particular situation, there are two thoughts. The one is the actual far field gain of the antenna, but then there's also the noise factor. You may have front end overload. There may be some intermod mixing that you actually have enough signal to pick up a WRMI from your location 40 miles away, but you have too much noise that's covering it up. Can you give some input on that?
Well, I'm not sure, Dr. Jack. You probably know more than me. I mean, I just know that there are, a couple of the guys that I listen to that were actually in radio years ago that know all about shortwave, that were AM broadcasters years ago, are only 10 miles south of me, which is still probably 35 miles east of the station, and they listen to it, but I can't. Now, I can listen to all kinds of shortwave. I just can't hear this one, and I'm thinking maybe it's I don't know if it's my spot. I mean, like I said, I've never had anybody say, yeah, it's kind of weak. People in Gainesville and Ocala in North Florida are telling me that they're hearing it at 20 and 30 over S9, and I just can't hear that. So I figured I was in that. From my understanding, it's easier to talk 1,000 miles away than it is 80 miles away. You know what I mean? Because of the propagation and stuff. So that was just an idea for me that I thought maybe would be a really good test. And and if it didn't work, it wouldn't have anything to do with your antenna. It might be my area. But man, if that actually let me listen to my own shortwave, wow, that would be a game changer to know that I put 5 antennas outside and I can't hear my own shortwave station that I put out every Sunday night.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, WRMI is also a sophisticated station, and they have directivity on various frequencies at various times of days. But I really don't think that's the major factor here. It's worthy of a discussion with you to break down the specifics of what you have tried, talk about the connections. Could there be a bad connection in there some way? A lightning arrestor has gone bad. They can fizzle out after a while. Different things. But certainly it's an inexpensive option to try. Sure,
yeah. And so I can see... what's that, Jeff?
I said, let me chime in here.
Well, hold on one second. So I can see right now we're going to run over just the hour here a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to tell everybody listening, because this is going to go just a little bit farther than an hour, I think, and then they'll cut me off because they're going to tell me, hey, I'm done. But there's a couple other questions I have and a couple other questions I'm going to ask Jeff and Dr. Jack. So if you're listening to this on the shortwave, it may end in about 2 minutes and 20 seconds. You can find the rest of it on YouTube with me on video for the first time ever doing a podcast on youtube.com/HamRadioConcepts or on any podcast platform, because I only pay for an hour slot on the shortwave, and my patrons on patreon.com/HamRadioConcepts are the ones that are putting this build together and paying the lights at WRMI. So I appreciate everybody who is at patreon.com/HamRadioConcepts. Thank you for your generous donations to help me, because it is costing money to pay this, but hopefully one day this really turns out to be a great adventure. And I want to give a shout out to my sponsors real quick on shortwave before I continue on. HamRadioPrep.com. Everybody who's been asked, I see the numbers. I see the people that are constantly commenting and putting out there that they've used HamRadioPrep.com to get their ham radio license. You can use the code EricPodcast20 or Eric20, depending on where you're watching this. Eric Podcast 20, you save 20%, and you might see some videos that make it very easy to get your ham radio license, some quizzes to get those answers understood in your head instead of just memorizing out of a book. the fun games and stuff to get you licensed on ham radio. So hamradioprep.com. You can get your technician, your general, and your extra. If you use the code EricPodcast20, you save 20% on every one of those courses you buy. And thank you for Ham Radio Prep for supporting my efforts as well, for doing a podcast, a shortwave, a YouTube, and everything else that I do. Thank you. So what we're going to do is, as we transition right now, you're listening on WRMI. Before we continue, go ahead and go right over to YouTube or the podcast platform and listen to this show to hear the rest of what we got to talk about, because I know Dr. Jack is just thrilled to be on here. Jeff is, and I am as well. And we only have an hour on shortwave. So thanks for those listening on shortwave. Listen, when you hear that commercial on WRMI, go right over and listen to the rest of this. This is the Ham Radio Concepts podcast, and I'll see you on the other side. So Dr. Jack, so I want to shift gears for 1 second here. You mentioned the micro beam. Jeff, I got to hear your thing on the micro beam, because I'm big into 2 meters and I'm big into the COMPACtenna, and I love the theory of all of it, but I've never played with the micro beam. Jeff, can you tell me anything about that?
Oh yeah, I first originally used the tri-bander on the counterpoise, on the bass counterpoise, and then I switched to the microbeam. Now when I switched to the microbeam, I was amazed. What I found out is I need more height. The antenna is receiving further away than I can transmit, so that's the first thing I knew. The best part about it was it's the way that the beam acts. It's not truly a beam like you'd shoot a flashlight beam out. You got more of a wider pattern on it. I think it was 120, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that range. And you don't actually have to be pointed at that exact direction. So it opens it up for a better receive, and you're still getting the higher gain from the receive. You're getting 15 dB, if I remember right. I hope I got that right, Dr. Jack. But I believe it's about 15 dB gain, and from my guesstimation, with me only running 50 watts, trying to get as far as I can, I can hit a repeater at 82, but I'm scratchy coming in.
82 miles?
82 miles.
And that's in your HOA, indoors, outdoors?
It's 35 feet actual from ground to height. It's 3 foot off the eave of the roof.
And how big is this antenna?
It's only 18, 20, or 21 inches wide.
Wow! Yeah, that man, that is impressive. I mean, I've used antennas that were 14 foot long and couldn't hit a repeater 82 miles away.
Yeah, and I don't even actually have to be pointed directly at it. I can be offset just a little bit from my rotor telling me. And you can actually dial it in, though. You can actually see the signal meter coming up as you're dialing it in off your rotor. And I'm just shocked every time I use his antennas, because everybody says that it's full quieting coming into that repeater, and that was 82 miles away. Oh, so that's my furthest one.
Your thoughts, Dr. Jack?
Just unmuting myself. Excellent input. As far as balance of transmit and receive, by the way, there are a lot of factors there, but one of the factors is that some of the repeaters are transmitting with 200 watts. So you are going to hear that better than they're going to hear you if you're transmitting with, say, 50 watts. So that's something I wanted to say. As far as gain, well, it's in terms of the vertical polarization in the far field, it's really more on the order of about 7 to 8 dB, 10 dB MEG, mean equivalent gain. Okay, what in the world is that? Well, what that is, and it may seem like 15, but it's more actually like about 10. Now, depending on the circumstance, sometimes it's even higher. What does that mean? Bottom line, we know that when we're down in a valley, on our home or in a vehicle, and we have say a 2 meter, 7 foot long collinear high gain antenna on our vehicle or on our base station, and again we're down in the valley, all that gain is slamming into the side of the of the hill, right? Whereas if you have a quarter wave, you can actually communicate. Yet the quarter wave has what, theoretically 0.7 dBi gain, whatever, much less, but its MEG, its mean equivalent gain, is much higher. So what goes into mean equivalent gain? Well, certainly it has the line of sight far field gain figure to it, but then there's more to it. And what's the exact formula? It depends on the circumstances, right? So it's a variable thing, but based on pattern, because sometimes pattern is much more important than pure gain in the line of sight environment. It has to do with diversity. What is that? Well, it has to do with electromagnetic field diversity, like elliptical or circular polarization. What else? Spatial diversity. If you have a three-dimensional antenna in various directions, all of these things add up to a mean equivalent gain, and that's the reason you're finding from such a small antenna. Again, it was designed to be crazy good for its tiny size. Okay, again, if you have a 150-foot tower, no, you put up the standard technology, you're away from the noise, all of that, but you can even get this thing into most attic openings fully assembled. You ever try to go up in an attic when it's hot up there, and you're trying to assemble a 10-foot long antenna? It's not fun. So
you're talking to somebody that lived in attics at AT&T and DirecTV, and let me tell you, I've seen some big attics, and I've had big attics, and I've worked in attics, many attics. Sometimes I could say, you know what? The first thing I thought as an AT&T installer, wow, I could fit an antenna right here. Nope. By then, I was already going delusional from the heat. It's not fun sitting up there trying to make an antenna. No way.
No, you're absolutely right. And then rotors. If you have a long antenna with a high wind load, you need a substantial rotor. Those aren't inexpensive. They're very nice, but they're not. You can use a TV rotor on this even outside. In fact, Jeff does.
Yeah, that's what I use.
Yeah, absolutely. And in your attic, well, you can get a rotor on there or properly installed. Okay, follow all regulations. But you can also do what I do. I mainly communicate in a couple of different directions, so I put two of them up there and I switch between them. Actually, I even go further. I have two dedicated radios so that I don't have to worry about the switch box going bad. So what was the last thing? Oh, Jeff was going to comment on the shortwave. Please do, Jeff. Have you received any ground wave signals, from either, 80 meters or 40 meters or AM broadcast or any of the shortwave broadcasts? There might be one that's not that far away from you, something on the order of 40, 80 miles, that kind of thing. Back to you, Jeff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to jump in there earlier. What I did, I started out using the sheets. I made a 3x3, 3x4 sheet there on the ground, and I got to playing around with it. I always play around with Dr. Jack's antennas because they're kind of fun. Um, I have a video on my YouTube page of this, but I took it off that grounding sheets and I moved it over to my barbecue grill. And when when I did that, it actually works great. When I did that, I noticed because it was sitting at an offset of an angle. It was maybe 35 degrees off, sitting at an angle. I was starting to pick up local stuff a little that was closer, and I say local on 80. I'm talking like from where I live, about 100 miles away. And now if I move it off the barbecue grill and set it on the flat sheets again, on the corner of the flat sheets, they go away. So I'm sure it's about the capacitance that it's getting, and it could be that angle that it was at. But it did work. I was able to pick up a guy in Evansville, Indiana, because I live in Indiana, and I was able to pick up a guy from Evansville, and as soon as I moved it, he went away. So
Yeah, see, Eric, Jeff was not able to use the aluminum foil extension to get improved capacitance coupling to the planet and to the groundwater. Okay, so therefore he found different results by moving it around to different areas. In your case, Eric, and I think we just got a yes on this, that he was receiving some ground wave stations in the order of 30 to 80 miles away. And in your situation, recheck all your connections and give it a whirl, because again, it's not just signal, it's signal to noise, and there's a lot of noise out there from all kinds of electronics these days. So you decrease the noise, you may wind up getting it. I wonder if Eric ever used a magnetic loop. But first, back to Jeff. Thanks for letting me do that interlude, Jeff.
oh, no problem, no problem. Yeah, I was just hinting at that fact that I don't know if it was the capacitance of the metal, different metal, the shape of it, or if it was because of the angle of that. But that it did change what I was receiving. But I did a whole SDR signal searching with that shortwave, with the shortwave antenna, and you can just see it starts at about 80 and goes all the way up to I took it all the way up to actually 6 meters, up to 50, and it was still resonating through that whole band, through the whole scheme of that band. And that's why I was just shocked that it actually modulates through the whole band. It just amazes me every time I use it. But it was comparable right with my mag loop, and that's why the shortwave I really wanted, because I needed a good receive. I was using my tri-bander on the roof for my SDR receive because it had such a good receive. And even on HF, I was telling Dr. Jack I was receiving HF off my tri-bander. But
Wow.
yeah. So I when I switched to the beam, I lost that capability, and then so now I got this shortwave one, and now I got my receive back, and this thing is awesome because of the size. It sits right on my barbecue grill on my porch. And,
Well, let me interject here, because one question I really wanted to address, and I wanted Dr. Jack's input on this. So for those who are still watching on the YouTube channel here, one thing I talked about to Dr. Jack over a year ago when I got the antenna, I found something, and it was new to me, but I had some questions, and I'll let him answer the questions. Now, what you're looking at here is the COMPACtenna on a mag mount base. Now, Dr. Jack, tell us about how you expect people to mount this, and then tell them about the mag mount placement. Meaning, can I drill this in to, or those who are wondering, can they drill it into the top of a roof, or let's say my RV? Now, my RV on the top is a membrane roof. It's not metal at any means. I can't stick a mag mount on there, but I want to have one of these for my 2-meter radio in the RV when we go traveling. Talk about mounting conditions and placements and the difference between different mag mounts and what you may find in case somebody finds one or gets one and says they bought an Amazon mount or they bought a diamond mount or whatever. Maybe they don't have the same outcome as what I had in the video or whatever. Tell them about that and how you designed it to be mounted.
Okay. Good question. Again, the installs page of COMPACtenna.com goes into quite some detail, which I won't here. But the basic notion is, and we're talking now about the 7.5 and 9-inch antennas. We're talking about getting it to match up well on VHF, because it tends to match up well on UHF almost no matter where you put it. We're talking about at the corner. What does that mean? Well, there are different types of mounts to get you on a vehicle at one of the upper corners. Oh, by the way, do some of the lower corners sometimes work, like the trunk lid, or even the hood? Yeah, a lot of people are doing that.
I put it on my hood, and it worked. It actually worked really well. But the hood on my work van is so narrowed down, it kind of looked like it was pointing in front of me. But it did actually work on the corner of the hood.
Yeah, yeah, and there are people with Jeeps and those types of vehicles and pickup trucks, and there are mounts now. But there's so many mounts now made available where you don't even need to drill anything, and yet it's a permanent mount. You loosen up one of the fender screws and it goes in there, and it works very well. Oftentimes it does. It isn't officially recommended because it's designed for upper corners, but often it does. Why isn't it official? Because depending on the A-pillar of the vehicle and the distance from the A-pillar and the angle of the A-pillar and the contour of the roof of the hood, it can change things around and not necessarily be ideal. But I'll tell you, it appears that more than 90% of people are having success right there on their pickup truck hood. Other people are using Magnum mounts. Okay, so back to the corner. Magnum mount, drilling a hole in your roof, L-bracket mounts, they're inexpensive. These are all NMO mounts, by the way, in this case. You have adjustable mounts. You have clamp-on style, which are fairly popular on hatchbacks, at the upper corner. These kind of things. They can all work. It's all about getting to the corner. So, you take like one vehicle I had, it was easy with the Magnum mount. What's great about a Magnum mount? They're easy. Are they the best? No. Theoretically, more than theoretically, your best is permanent mount. But you know what? It's always good to have a Magnum mount, because before you drill holes, either through your roof or screws with L brackets or adjustable mounts, which are basically fancy L brackets, you can get a rough idea of what the SWR is going to be at 2 meters, VHF, whatever, near, at the corner there where you're about to drill. Even if it's an aluminum roof, because that doesn't matter. You still have capacitive coupling, okay? So the one vehicle I had, it was really easy based on the way the contour of the vehicle was. They have contour in order to increase rigidity. It's relatively thin metal. And then you also have like rack mounts up there and whatnot, but they didn't get in the way. It was right at the corner. Then I got another vehicle, I couldn't get it right at the corner. And often just, it was like 6-7 inches away. Every inch you got closer to the corner, the SWR got even better. What's good enough? Well, what's good enough per your radio specification? We all know the general rule of thumb is below 2 to 1 kind of thing. So on this vehicle, I switched over to the L bracket. It's easy. You open up the hatchback, you drill the holes, and you can't see them. And when you go to trade in the vehicle or whatnot, well, you just fill them in. And it's never hurt me before in trade-in value. So I think I answered the question. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And so I'll put a timestamp on here. Next.
Oh, wait a minute. Eric, there was one last thing. You mentioned RVs. You mentioned RVs.
Yes, I got to know. Go ahead.
Yeah, RVs that don't have metal and that kind of thing. Okay, so people do all kinds of creative things. We're hams, we do creative things. There are ladder mounts, a lot of standard antennas won't work well on ladder mounts at all. This may work well. Or if you have like an RV or and you don't have a metal roof, but you have a long rail, okay? If you mount this at the end of a long rail, you definitely get better SWRs than you do out of your typical standard antenna technology. So it's an option, okay? What is the other option? People actually take a sheet of metal, whatever size, a couple feet, few feet by few feet, whatever, and they get it up there one way or another, from the outside or the inside or however they get it up there. And where do you think? This would be the question, Eric. If you had a sheet of metal up there, if you mounted a sheet of metal and did it well, where on that sheet of metal would you mount the 7.5 or 9 inch antenna for your best assessment?
On the corner.
Exactly. On the corner. Absolutely. It works well. Go ahead.
I was just thinking on my top of my RV, because I told my wife, this is not our camping RV anymore. This is our mobile ham radio communication station. And the first thing I want to do is have the Scan 3 on there, where I could do GMRS and I could have, VHF, UHF and stuff on there and be able to listen to different things. But I'm trying to figure out how, so I'd have to, I wonder if I can mount it on the corner of one of the solar panels that's aluminum frame that's mounted on the top. But then again, I don't think it's solid. It's aluminum framed and the middle's glass. So that might not work. But I will come up with an idea for that. But evidently, I'm not the only one that's thought about this, because I've seen COMPACtennas on RVs. I told you this in the email. I've seen them on the road. And I thought, well, I know that antenna, and that's that. But I'm going to put a timestamp on here in about 4 or 5 minutes, because I've taken way too much of your time and Jeff's time, but I could talk to you guys forever. And at that point, people are going to it'd be like, wow. But you know what, Jeff, Dr. Jack, I would love to have you on another episode, because I know if you have comments or questions on theory of antenna and understanding really how antennas work, send the questions to hamradioconcepts@gmail.com. Maybe we'll have a question and answer. I'll take the questions and I'll ask, because Dr. Jack is more than, I mean, I'm just a mediocre YouTube guy. This man knows quantum physics on how antennas work, and that's what's made his product so successful. And Jeff, you can assume the same thing. You would agree that it's not just a made-in antenna. He has put things that I don't even know how to discuss into his design.
Yeah, the best way I tried to explain it metaphor-wise was back when we used to use paper before computers. And then now you got computers taking over. Well, Jack's antenna is like the computer of antennas.
Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah, and Dr. Jack, are you going to be at any Hamfest in the future? Do you want to tell anybody? Because maybe someone hears this and sees it and wants to meet you in person and talk about this. Are you going to be anywhere soon?
That's a great question. The answer is yes. The Dayton Hamvention is,
Nice.
What is it now, about 4 weeks away.
Yes,
and,
Dayton Hamvention.
I was honored by the Dayton Hamvention Committee. They just informed me that they moved me up to one of the premier buildings, Building 5, which is right across from 123. So I'll be in there in 5208, I think it is, both. So yeah, it would be a pleasure to meet anyone and talk about it. In fairness, in my closing comment, unless you ask me yet something else, Eric or Jeff, nobody understands everything. The more we come to understand, and yes, I do think deeply about these things, it's just amazing, this God-gifted world that we have. I mean, I love to talk about, quantum entanglement, near field, immediacy of interaction, the spooky interaction that Einstein set to test, or to Niels Bohr, and in that near field, with the electric and the magnetic field, generating this virtual photon, one of the gauge bosons, and then as it continues, from immediacy of interaction to the virtual photon to the actual electromagnetic carrying photon, yet at the speed of light, right? Without immediacy, fast but not immediacy. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating, and what an honor it is to be able to take the concepts as best as I can figure them. Actually, most of them come in visions, and then I spent years in order to break it down, into our present understanding and maybe a little bit extra, and then build it, into something that actually works as it was designed to work. It's to help mankind in many ways. Thank you again for this, Eric. This was great.
Man, Dr. Jack, I hope you watch this YouTube video, because I just start laughing and grab my head like, wow, man, I wish I knew how to spell boson or what it was or what it meant. You are just a treat to have on it. Probably the smartest person I'll ever talk to on a Ham Radio Concepts podcast. It is just a joy. And I've, I want to learn more from you, Dr. Jack, because you've obviously, you have a lot of time and education in this, and I've never tried to advertise myself that I'm smart. I've learned a lot by burning out radios and playing with designs. And you know what? I would appreciate if you one day, if I would show you something, you may say, wow, I can't believe you actually made that bicycle rim work. But I've talked on a bicycle rim with an alligator clip on a loop tuner to Chile and some other countries on 10 meters. And, I may not understand how a loop tuner works, Dr. Jack, but I get how to use it. And it was, or how I talked to New York on a tape measure that somebody else turned into a patented device. I mean, and Jan, you remember, Dr. Jack, the Vero Beach Amateur Radio Club, you had a Zoom meeting with them. And I told Jan, I said, this episode, he said, oh my gosh, I got to listen to this because you talked with him and the other people in the Vero Beach Amateur Radio Club in Florida, and they were astounded by you. Some of them said, well, this guy's way over my head. And they've been hams for 40, 50 years, and I don't think they appreciated the amount of integrity that's in your head. So they thought maybe they were frightened, but the majority of what I heard was that you did a Zoom meeting and people loved hearing what you had to say. And you did actually. For those who don't know, Dr. Jack did donate a couple of COMPACtennas for our Ham Fest that we had. That was going to be in December or November sometime this year, but it was a couple years ago, and he donated, and I gave him away his door prizes for everybody that attended, and the people that said that they used them, they loved them, and thank you for that, Dr. Jack, for donating that, because you opened up a couple of eyes of people that maybe have never heard your product. The bottom line is, I may be familiar now, and Jeff may be familiar. If somebody listening has never heard about your product before, and I hope that they appreciate this episode and do more research on your website, on COMPACtenna.com, and I hope that they learn more about this and understand that you've made something that's different than just a shortened antenna.
I'm sure Jeff would like to make a closing comment. If I can make mine, I hope I haven't been too intimidating. That can happen. Listen, all people are wonderful. We all have our skills and our gifts, and I increasingly find that it's a balance. Where you have strengths, you have weaknesses, and if you can minimize your weaknesses and maximize your strength, that's a beautiful thing. Let's make sure to always show appreciation for anyone in all walks of life, including those amazingly creative artists, musicians, etc., etc. And then anybody, because we all have our gifts, and it's a great thing if we have the opportunity in life to maximize them as best we can. Thanks again. This was a pleasure.
Wow, that was cool. And wow. So normally at the end of the show, I usually say, hey, if closing comments, and you got a minute and a half to say whatever you want to say, on anything, it's your turn. But I'll give you that opportunity because, Dr. Jack, you can reiterate on that. If I think what you just said was amazing, but I usually say that, and I'll give you just the equal opportunity. If there's anything you want to say in this next minute, the mic is yours. Do you have anything else to say? You can say whatever you want.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. Well, thank you. As far as COMPACtenna, it's all of my inventions were developed originally to try to substantially, in some way, help mankind in the betterment, and it turned into an avocation, and then a vocation, it thrills me when I hear the mobile stroke ambulance at Cleveland Clinic, and they're telling me the technology helped save 19 lives, and just delighted ham radio operators having fun with it. Secret Service, FBI, Federal Communications, all of this, it just to benefit as much as I can. That's what brings, one of the key things that brings me joy, and knowing where that came from.
Awesome. That is awesome, and I could see right now where I hope to have Dr. Jack on again with some more questions and stuff to learn from him, because this has just been a treat. It's not me getting somebody for material for a podcast. I want to learn, and it's not for me; it's for us. And I hope that people enjoy the efforts that I make to do this, to arrange this, and spend the time and leave my wife out there so that I could totally do this, because that's what I want to do. Jeff, it's your turn, buddy. The mic is yours. Any closing comments, whatever you want, and whatever you want to say, man. It's your turn. Go ahead.
Well, I first want to thank Dr. Jack. It's been excellent getting to know you, and you talk with such passion and such wit about the subject that it's awesome to see you flourish in that environment. And keep making antennas, man, because they're good. So it's about the best that I can say there. If anybody's wanting to know, on my YouTube channel, it's Ham Bandit. I have all Dr. Jack's antennas, most of them. I got 3 so far. Reviews, kind of reviews, not really. They're me setting it up, actually using it. And if you want to check those out, you can check those out. Kind of help you through your setup, any kind of questions you'd have. Those videos will help you. They're linked on on the COMPACtenna webpage. So other than that, I wanted to thank you, Eric. I appreciate you doing this, inviting me on. I'm a fairly young YouTuber, so I just started last June, and I wanted to I appreciate you, and I watch all your videos, so I am a fan, and it's great that you do this, and I hope you keep doing it for other people, and it helps improve our amateur radio environment here. So with that being said, Dr. Jack, I wanted to thank you again, and I'll leave it at that. Back to you, Eric.
Well, thank you very much. And this is more. I have to say, this is more fun than making a video on a product that I think is fun, because I think what we talked about today is more fun than any product I could put in front of me. Thank you, Dr. Jack, for your time today. Thank you, Jeff, for your time today. Thank you for everybody who's listening. Thank you for WRMI for letting me buy these time slots. Thank you for HamRadioPrep.com for sponsoring me this. Thank you for Patreon.com/HamRadioConcepts and all my patrons who have been donating graciously, and the P.O. Box and the emails and the PayPals and all the donations. You guys make it happen. It is something I've always wanted to do for this hobby, and the little bit of revenue does help, because this is a full-time job and it costs money to put this stuff on. So I do appreciate everybody who's involved in this. I will let you go with this, everybody, and I'll let them sign off with their call signs, but more videos are going to be on the way. This is Jeff's fault. If you're watching here, this is Jeff's fault for making me do this on video, and I and I hope that leave your comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. If you liked watching me do this and smiling and throwing my hands up and doing all that during this podcast and getting excited, if you like that, I'll do every podcast like this, so you have more to watch than just a thumbnail. I will do that. I was a little nervous.
Click the like button.
Click the like button, subscribe, and I was nervous doing this, but he said, you got to do this, and I said, what better to do it than with Dr. Jack and Jeff? So thank you, everybody, for watching and everything everybody's done. And Jeff, thank you, and Dr. Jack, thank you. You guys can sign off. I'm going to sign off now. This is KJ4YZI with Ham Radio Concepts, along with Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff. It's your turn.
Oh, yeah. Jeff KD9TOE, and I want to say 73s to everybody.
And this is Dr. Jack, November 8, November Delta Lima, saying 7-3s, to looking forward to meeting you. Eric and Jeff, you do so much good. Keep it up.
Thank you, everybody, and make sure to check out Dr. Jack at his booth in Building 5 at the Dayton Hamvention next month. And do me a favor, tell Dr. Jack, if you listen to this, say, hey, I heard you on a podcast. That way he could tell me, hey, there was like 5 people that showed up and listened. Hopefully I have more people than 5, but hopefully you guys can go and just meet this man. He is just amazing and so high energy, so energetic, and so fun. It was just amazing. So 7-3, everybody. We're going to sign off now. This is KJ4YZI.